Swimmers progress at different rates. Some swimmers learn skills faster, and some swimmers learn skills slower. The challenge is navigating the coaching process when different swimmers are learning at different rates. We have to figure out how to give them all what they need to improve. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. A coach asked me what to do if you're midway through the season and one or two of your swimmers hasn't made nearly as much progress as you expected. At some point, you need to start challenging their skills, but they haven't really got it yet, and it's not clear exactly what you should do. How do you handle such swimmers? This is a great question because the reality is that coaching is messy. Everyone's not going to progress at the same rate, and they're not going to progress to the same degree. Some of that is attendance, some of that is effort, and some of it is just that some swimmers are better than others. This is always going to be something that needs to be managed, and it's usually not just one swimmer that's going to have to be handled differently. At any given time, you're going to have a spectrum of skill and ability level, and so this is a challenge that you're going to face every single day. So let's talk strategy for how to overcome this challenge. First, focus on progress versus perfect. If swimmers are making progress, even if they're not making progress as quickly as you'd like, they're still moving in the right direction. Their skills don't have to be perfect. They won't be perfect. But if they're better than they were at the beginning of the season, then you're on the right track. If that happens each and every season, they're going to be in a good place sooner than later. Some swimmers are just going to progress slower, and different swimmers are going to have a different final destination point. If they're moving in the right direction, I try not to worry about it too much, and instead I focus on making sure that they continue to make progress. While it's important to always help swimmers try to improve as much as they can, it's important to recognize that as much as they can is going to be different for different swimmers. Now, if swimmers aren't progressing at the same rate, it's also not something you can just ignore. Coaching rule number one is give them something that they can be successful with. To help them improve, we got to give them what they need, and that can take a lot of different forms. For a given workout or set, there are tons of different ways to make a set slightly easier for those that aren't progressing quite as fast and do so without disrupting the flow or the rhythm of the workout. You can change the intervals, you can change the drills, you can change the challenge of the set, you can adjust performance expectations, and so on. Anything that you might do to make a set harder for those that aren't making quite as much progress, you can just make those simple adjustments in the opposite direction to make the set easier. Or you can just make individual adjustments on an as-needed basis. If swimmers are lagging behind, you'll likely have to find ways to keep them engaged in the workout, or they're going to continue to lag behind even more. Another strategy is to try to avoid the situation as much as possible in the first place. Early in the season, it's really important to be relentless with trying to create change. Use your best drills in their simplest form and aim to make progress. You want to see as much change as possible as soon as possible in all your swimmers. Some swimmers aren't going to get it right away with your initial strategies, and so you may need to find alternative strategies to help them learn the skills that you're trying to develop. Figure out what's going to work better as soon as possible so you don't end up in a situation where 2 months down the road it's do or die and they just can't do. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but do what you have to do to make sure that every swimmer is creating some sort of forward progress and some sort of technical change. And if they're not, you'll likely have to change the approach for those swimmers because whatever you're asking them to do, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be clicking. For most skills, I usually have 1 to 2 primary strategies that work most of the time for most swimmers. They tend to be the simplest and the most effective, but for some swimmers, it simply doesn't work. For those swimmers, it's usually necessary to have plan B, C, or D, and once you recognize that plan A isn't getting the job done, it's time to move on to those other opportunities and those other strategies. Now, at some point in the season, swimmers are going to have to learn to race with whatever they've got. If swimmers' skills aren't necessarily where you want them to be, they still have to learn how to sustain those skills regardless of how good the skills are. Whatever they can execute at that point, they have to learn how to bulletproof those skills. If you don't prepare them to learn how to race because of a continued focus on skill development and learning new skills, you're going to end up with 2 big problems. One, they're probably not going to improve their skills anyway. At that point, whatever you've been doing hasn't worked and it's probably not going to start working then. Second, they're not going to be fit enough or resilient enough to finish races with the skills they do have. In most cases, it's best to focus on working with what they've got to help them learn how to execute those skills under pressure. And then next time around, next season, figure out what went wrong so that you don't end up in that situation again in the first place. It might require better adjustments during the season, or it might require a better approach at the beginning of the season to make sure that those swimmers learn the skills that need to be improved. It might require both, it might require something else. Figure it out and do what you can to avoid the problem in the first place. If you want ideas for how to plan for skill development and adjust the challenge over time so that swimmers continue to learn and they learn how to execute their skills under pressure, check out the video here.